do, 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 do. It's disco dinner with your cowboy Bob. Hi, I am Sensei Al Bob's younger cousin, Cowboy. And there's the dinner. There it is, the disco dinner. And it's fish and onions and carrots and tomatoes. Yummy. I got disco dinner in my tummy. Ooh, there it is, right there. Right. Ooh, look, fish. Ooh. And I took the last $25 I had and bought these vegetables and fish and basically made dinner for myself and a John. And he just came down from upstairs. Well, kind of cleaned up his kitchen. And just like I do here, well, wash the pots and the pans and the dishes. And, my ulterior motive was that every time I cook food, just like this time, it takes, we had one plate and one spoon. I mean, everything else had moved upstairs along with, tools. So I go up there and wash his dishes so I can take the dishes and the spoons and everything. I leave, I took 3 spoons. Oh, this is what I took. Oh, took this little guy, which I've had, and I took 2 spoons. Just two. 3. These 3. And this plate. And another plate. So now we have 3 plates. Well, Yes. Well, food's been going up. I don't know if you guys have noticed. Onions, a bag of onions used to cost $1.28. Now they're $3.24. Oh, squash used to be 40 something cents a pound. Now they're $1 something a pound. And the fish, this used to be $4. Now it's 10. But for $21.74, I bought enough vegetables, fish, and what else did I buy? I bought some yogurt and sour cream. And so for $21.74, I have enough food for almost a week, I would say, for both John and I. Right? I don't go, oh, it's costing me money. No, John's my friend. He needs to eat good food. Well, I'll make it for us. Tomorrow, I'll make a nice omelet. One of the Kroger's, thing I love about Kroger's is they have these manager special things. Like the fish. Fish cost $15. It was $9.74 because I was on manager special. And it had this really nice egg bread with jalapenos in it. It'll make really nice French toast tomorrow morning. So I'm going to make them a nice French toast. And then I've got 2 ripe avocados. And some really nice, interesting, again, it was dated, so it was like a $8 container of this really interesting jalapeno sour cream, but because it was past its date, it was $1.25. I mean, I totally past its date, but past, you know. And if I didn't buy it then, it probably would have been thrown out, at the end of the day. So I bought it. Right? So I will make the French toast, put that there, put a slab of cream cheese, and they had, again, some dated cream cheese. And instead of $3, it was 74 cents for two. And cream cheese. Cream cheese I've had in that refrigerator for 2 years and I still eat it. Right? So, again, you better get used to it because the potential, I don't know if you've noticed, but the federal government and state governments have been doing these tests or exercises, that's the word, exercises. And have you noticed every time there has been like on 9/11, when the alleged aircraft was allegedly hijacked, the allegedly flew into the buildings because I can say allegedly because there was never an investigation, never a forensic criminal investigation. Right? They just said, "Oh, this is what happened," and they wrote it down in a thing called the 9/11 thing, and they said, "This is what happened." I didn't investigate it. Right? I would suggest to you because they used the federal, the Cheney Bush administration used popular mechanics as a scientific benchmark to say what happened on 9/11. No, I don't know what happened on 9/11. I wasn't there on that day. I wasn't in the, cabin of those aircraft with those captains. They never found the black boxes to any of those aircraft, even the one that crashed in Pennsylvania or wherever in the field out there. They never found. They never found. You know, I used to be a newspaper photographer, and I took a lot of pictures of accidents and crashes and things like that because the newspaper, the town I worked in, Happont, North Carolina, in 1969, police department didn't have their own forensics folk, right? If they needed real forensics, they would go to the State Bureau of Investigation. Those guys would come. They had a SCI guys. But pretty much any shootouts, any murders, any this, any that, they take pictures. And the people would take pictures were us, the newspaper photographers, right? And there was this kind of sweetheart relationship between the cops and the newspapers. And kind of, that's what it is. And a buddy of mine was a brilliant photographer. Just as I'm an electrician, he was a photographer. And we went to high school together. And we were buds for 2 years. And we did the yearbook, and we did a arts magazine, and we got a lot of credit for that. He actually got to go to art school because of the stuff we did, and I got to go to Juilliard and Hofstra University for the stuff we did. And so when I was trying in 1969 to stay away from my draft board before I went back to school, there was this little hiatus, and I kind of, stayed away from my. I didn't break any laws. I was registered and everything. I just never was in any one place long enough for anyone to ever figure out where I am, and I pretty much have been living that way my whole friggin' life. So, the so my friend, so I was hanging out at Duke University and at Chapel Hill. Um, my one little thing when I was trying to stay away from my draft board was, if you're going to hide from somebody, what's the best place to hide? Right in plain sight. So, I'm 19 years old. Where do I go to blend in? But college campuses. I had a lot of friends at Duke and I had a lot of friends at UNC. So I could go there, and at the least I could hang out in their dorm room or their, you know, uh, fraternity house, and and that's what I would do. I would kind of come in, crash in their place, kind of start to ease myself in, find a nice girl, stay with her, blah blah blah. And so I was at Duke, and so my friend, he was in High Point, which is not too. Durham is not that far from High Point. They're in what is now known as the Research Triangle. It sure wasn't that then. Back in that day, it was like tobacco and cotton and other stuff. Anyway, so my buddy, he was going to some art school near High Point, but he had been working in that newspaper, the High Point Enterprise, since he was like, like I was an electrician at 9. He was a newspaper photographer at like 9, right? Because his dad was the head librarian for the state, and his mom had a big job too. And so he got that, and he was a really great photographer. He taught, my dad kind of taught me how to be a photographer, but my buddy taught me really how to be a great photographer. And like I said, we did all the high school photography for 2 years. Anyway, so I was at Duke, and I had a great gig in that I had this really brilliant girlfriend. I mean, I've always had women are just so much smarter than guys. They just are. Guys are almost irrelevant. They're definitely expendable. Why? That's why, men went off to war and women didn't. Not because they couldn't, because it's pretty much shown women are a lot more badass than guys are. And so, I mean, I would much rather go up against a well-trained guy in the military sense than a woman, because they'll just eat you alive. So I was at Duke, and the woman she was studying was a grad student. I was 19. She was like 20 something. And she had a suite. She had a nice place. So I said, instead of like sleeping on the floor of my friend's fraternity, we met. She really liked me because kind of understood what she was doing. I was into the paranormal. She was studying neuro linguistics. She had been, at MIT. But what she wanted to map the brain. She had spent some time in Oxford and spent some time in the Tavistock Institute, and she was really about, the whole thing of making super soldiers. And she had worked for Nazis, and she had that blonde hair thing. She looked like a vril, and she was, and most guys were scared shitless of her. I mean, she was gorgeous, beautiful, brilliant, talked about stuff that nobody understood, but I did. And she was like, you understand? Yeah, you read that book? Well, that's pretty amazing. And that was how our relation started out. And then once, first we just kind of hung out because I was at my friend's place. I took her to a couple parties, and she had never been a party girl, but once she got stuck her toe into partying, she actually liked it. But she was really good in that when we would party, she would go nuts and have the greatest of times. But after it was done, back to work, back into being. And she loved the fact that I could, be that way too, right? And so I'm off there studying this and going to lectures and so we get intimate. We talk about everything. I tell her about my experiences in the paranormal in the Theosophical Society, right? And that I was part of the Thule Society. And she said, "Oh, I'm part of the Bowls, really? Oh, that's cool." So we done anyway. So, and then I told her that I was part of the Blue Door, which was a really, it was like one of those things before the new age. And it was some guy who had a lot of money, bought a building down in Soho. He kind of fell across me and wanted me to, put in new service, fix it up, blah, blah, blah. And he wanted to build a laboratory. He was connected with NYU, and he was, big mucky muck, a psychologist and neurologist and, mind, chemistry, Anyway, he's well published, all the above. And once I was fixing all this stuff up for him, he goes, and I was playing with electromagnetic, the magnetic part, and so I was building these Faraday cages. And he once came into my studio and said, "Whoa, what are you doing here?" And I showed him, and I said, and I had a chair, and I had a, 30 cage around the chair, and I would go and I had a PVC pipe pyramid that and a chair, and I would sit in the chair in the pyramid with the Faraday cage all around, and in the room I had like blackened all the windows out, and I had read, I was into, you know aeronautical engineering, and I had gone to, when I was a boy, to Sperry, and they had one of these ana something rooms where they have all these shapes that negate frequencies, sound frequencies, right? And they could null every sound. So you walk in there, you couldn't even hear anything, right? Except maybe your heart because it was connected to you. And anyway, so I got into the paranormal, and I got into building in New York, in the Green Door, in that guy's laboratory. I built there's a guy who wrote a book called The Dieter Factor, and he definitely was a Nordic alien. I mean, this guy, he was like, 7'8". He was really good looking. He had really long blonde hair. I mean, he was like sculpted like David, right? And he always wore these, like, always had a cape, and an Armani suit with a cape, right? And he had a dapper cane, and so this guy was this other guy's kind of partner, and he had some interesting technology cage around the whole thing, and then we built sensory deprivation tanks, right? And we he was definitely a alchemist because we just didn't have water with salt in it. He had a kind of water. He called it null water, right? And it had not just salt, but salt crystals that were other things that kind of reacted to your body. So you kind of floated on top of this water, and you really didn't get wet. You didn't get submerged, right? It wasn't like being in a bathtub. It was like you floated above it, right? To the point where you weren't even quite touching the water, but you would float. So this guy had quite a few interesting things up his sleeve. And he would, make these. Can you make this? I'd make it. I had no idea what the fuck that was, but I'd make it. And he really liked me, and he kept, um, you know, saying, "Wow, you are one interesting." He used to call me a monkey boy. He goes, "You're one heck of a monkey boy." And I remember we'd be at these conferences, and instead of saying this is my protege or my assistant, this is my monkey boy, number one, number one monkey boy. So, and that was another reason why I, was part of this NGO at the UN later in the '70s for alternative technologies because he kind of lived at the UN, right? And he lived where he was. Billy Joel has a song about where wherever he goes, he's at home. As long as he's got his hat and his girl, and that was this guy. right? And all the girls loved this guy. I mean, we're like, just he'd walk in a room and like it was like flies to whatever. And what was amazing was this guy just permeated sexual attraction. But he, for as long as I known him, he never had a, yeah, no, he had one girlfriend that he called his queen, right? And that was kind of towards the end. And he met her, and about within 6 months, he was off the planet. Never saw him again, right? And so he wrote a book called The Dieter Factor. So go look that up, gang. And I can't remember his name, but if you look that up, there's a picture of him, and that's, he'll have this cape, and he's like, you'll see what I'm talking about. And you read what he's talking about. He doesn't quite say that he's from, some planet, but, he's telling you that he's from another planet. So I was exposed to all this stuff before I even showed up at Duke. And the guy who ran it, he came from California, from a university that starts with an S, Stanford. And he was had started with the guys who started JPL, and also he was a really good buddy of one of those guys who was part of oh, who's the guy that started the Church of Satan, and he's over there in England, and he was Barbara Bush's dad. So above, so below. Well, there's a crew of guys who hung out with him during World War II because they were all fighting the Nazis. And they had this thing, a paranormal whoop-de-doo. And you ever watch the, Hellboy movies? There's a new one coming out. That organization actually exists. And these guys had been part of that. And this is 1969. And I kind of get injected into this by this girl who I'm living with at Duke, who's a grad student. She's going for her PhD, and she is part of this program, which is being funded by DARPA, but it's a private corporation. And that's so if anybody wanted to, file a thing to go, hey, if they knew what that project was and what number it was and all that, they could get, a very redacted thing of it. And that's what a FOIA report is. But all of the really wild, crazy technology is owned by these corporations, Lockheed, Boeing, Grumman Aerospace, all of those guys. And if it's a private corporation, that's proprietary information. You can't get it. Sorry. Even if the taxpayers have paid for it, even if it's 100% DOD and DOE and NSA and ONI and all of the alphabet universe. And I mean, that's, they wrote the laws so they could, put a wall up so the people who the Constitution is supposed to represent can't see what's going on, even though it's going to affect their lives in a big way. And that's what nanotechnology was. That's what your cell phone is. That's what the internet is. It's all from those guys. And so here I was, and the company that was running this was known as the SEAL Corporation out of Stanford. And that's another one you could probably go Google. And that's what they were looking to do was to make super soldiers. And they were studying everything. So they were studying the Indian guys who could stick swords through their cheeks, right? And then pull them out. Never feel any pain. And within 15 minutes, there wasn't even a scar where the sword went right through. And walking on coals and all that kind of stuff, right? So, when I met this girl in the library, we started talking, we started hanging out, we started going out, and then I moved in, and all during that time, we were having a great time having fun, and B, she was involving me in her experiments because she had things that she had experiment, and she would take me into her lab and so how do what kind of electric device do you think I should use to do this? If I want to measure this, what should I do? And what kind of this? And I would build these little apparatus for her. And by doing that, she got certain data streams that she got a lot of, pats on the back from the guys in the home office. And then her supervisor, turned her over to the head guy that started the Seal Corporation, and he said, "So how did you get this information? And did you design this little thing here?" And she goes, "Well, kind of." And he goes, "What do you mean, kind of?" She said, "Well, my boyfriend, he's really good at this stuff." And so I want to meet that guy. So I met that guy, and I told him about my little pedigree, and he knew half the people I knew, right? So I mean, he knew Madame Ogle, right? He had been in her curiosity shop, and he had gone through the imaginary mirror, right? He knew all of the Indian mystics that I met through my girlfriend Holly, who was, it was like Harold and Maude. She was like 76 years old, and I was like 18 when we were living together as a thing. And I was in the, oh, mid late 60s when all the gurus were coming from India. And, Hare Krishna, Krishna, that whole scene was going on. And she had lived in India as a little girl in the 20s. Her father was an English astronomer and was there for Halley's Comet. And that's what she got named after. And all these mystic guys, her father was really into mysticism. So all these old, mystic guys kind of, you know, came in and you know, she sat on their lap and she was a cute little, she like Shirley Temple. And anyway, 1960s, 50 years later, here they are really old guys now, and they're coming to America to enlighten the Americans. And, they go and have these gigantic things in stadiums and things. Anyway, these old guys who had big, groups of people, and and they're making a ton of money, and they all be staying at the Waldorf Astoria, and they would stay down in Hallie's little apartment, her rent controlled apartment, which is basically one room about the size of this kitchen or a little smaller, and we'd all sleep on the floor. And when these guys would show up, they would stay with her at night, and they would cook for her the Indian food she liked when she was a little girl, right? And then we'd all do samadhi and meditate. And this one guy, I forget his name, but he was buds with the guy who the book, the autobiography of a mystic, or that guy. He wasn't that guy, but he was his best friend, and they were like connected. Anyway, so they had come from their little ashram down in the West Village up Seventh Fence, and he was way up there on big pillows and everything. And I was, being Mr. Electric, and I was, midtown doing something, and I had gone and I was A, had to look for a hardware store, B, I was looking for lunch, and all of a sudden I'm on Sixth Avenue, and it's Sixth Avenue, and I don't know, probably 24th Street or something like that. And I hear this voice in my head, "Al, turn around and look up." So I turn around and look up, and a good 3 or 4 blocks down the road is this big bunch of people coming up Sixth Avenue, and there's this gigantic wagon with two-story wheels with a big platform and loads of pillows and all kinds of flowers. And there's the little guy who slept last night in Hallie's little thing with us, and we meditated together. His voice is in my head, and I'm looking 3, 4 blocks away, and it's like my eye turns into a telescope, and I see all the way to him, and he's got this little smile on his face, and he's talking into my head, and I can see his lips move to the words that are going in my head, and it's like, "I really like you. You're good for Hallie." And the fact that she's 76 and you were 18, that's fine. Don't worry about it. You may or may not see me again because my schedule is going to be a little more hectic as it has been. And he's like just talking about regular blah blah blah. And how did you like the dinner I made for you last? Just regular kind of stuff. But he's like 4 blocks away talking in my head. And I'm looking at him, and he is floating above the pillows. I can see the light between his butt and the pillows. And he's just talking about, she's very close to me. She's almost like my granddaughter. I really, really care about her. And I really, I'm getting verklempt. I really appreciate the fact that, your mind is open enough to love her and treat her nicely, and because she's been alone for so long, and here you are. And she stayed my sweetie for another 15 years till she died. I mean, I got married, I had girlfriends, I had this and that, but we were always where we were. And it wasn't about sex, it was about love, intimacy, right? Anyway, and I was with her when she died, when she passed over. And that was really a spiritual thing because Hallie, she had been a great artist, a great dancer. Everything she did, she was great. And she was part of the Theosophical Society. That's how we got to be part of it. She was part of a number of esoteric and occult things. She got me into this very interesting group that was at Weiser's bookstore. Weiser's was not just an antiquarian bookstore, but they had these back rooms that these different groups that had been part of this whole scene for 100 years or more. And that's where I kind of got into the Thule Society. And Holly was part of that. She had really, when she let her hair down, it went down to her ankles. She had really, 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 really long hair. So there I was in Duke University with this very strange guy, and he had a whole cadre of Nazi guys that had a number of them had worked with, were part of the you know, who's the guy who was the SS propagandist? He was, they were part of that. They were also part of the between World War One, well, before World War One, between World War One, after World War One, there was a thing called the. Oh, they invented propaganda. They invented modern advertising. They invented MK Ultra, Tavistock Institute. So they had this amazing group of very strange people, and they were all, if you when they told you who their teachers were and where they, started and da da da. I mean, when I knew them, when I was working with them in 1969, they were already like 90 years old. They didn't look 90. They looked a good, 45, 50. And they were very vibrant, And it was quite, and that whole scene of, you want to steal my hat. Research. All you got to do is come and get me, and I'll give you this hat. I got a bunch of them. I found them at some crappy store, and they were like nothing. The guy said, here, take them all for 10 cents. Just get rid of them. So I got a bunch of these things. And they aren't, I got ones that are a little bit bigger, have a little big brim. I mean, they're, all it is a corncob pop. Yeah. Hi, I'm Cowboy Bob. You know, I'm Al Bob's cousin. Yep. And a fishing pole. Yep. And a place to fish. You know, that's one of my talents I don't have. I had 2 girlfriends who were fishers. Did you ever hear the story of Scar? Did I ever tell you? I told the story of Scar on John Boy's channel. I'll have to tell it again here someday. But anyway, she was a pirate, a real pirate. That's how she got that scar. And and she had a lot of boats, and she made a lot of money because we were in the British West U.S. Indies, and she would go from island to island. Some islands, they had bananas. Others had this. Some had that. And she would take them. When we got so many bananas, just take them. And then she'd take them over to another island that had no bananas, make money, and that's what she did. And she had me build her like a little disco because she had one of those boats, really great boat. It was like a lobster pot boat, had a crane on it. It could lift almost anything off of anywhere and put it on this big flat deck, right? But it's like an aircraft carrier. Underneath that deck, it was gigantic because back in the day, they had these gigantic freezers. So we would pull in these places like Tortola. I don't know if you guys have ever been to Tortola. Tortola is a beautiful island, and it has about, I don't know, 600, 700 beautiful beaches all the way around. And it's a volcanic chunk of stone. And at one end of the island, there's this stuff and do things. And they the rich come in with their big yachts and get outfitted, and those little towns have all the fruit and the food and the booze and the this and whatever they need. And there's about 600 little beautiful beaches that aren't connected. You can't get there any other way but by boat. So the rich people get outfitted, and then they come and put their boat right there, and then they put down their little Chris Craft that go in and they set up little tents and you know kibachis. And I stayed there for a year as they'd be there and outfitting, and I'd stay in this bar and start talking to people and reading their palms and doing cards and go, oh, your neck looks this, and they go, hey, would you like to get on the boat and come with us? Well, you entertain us, give us a massage, you do this, you do that, and we'll give you a nice tip. Not a problem. So I would do that, and they take me out. I'd eat lobster, drink champagne. All the pretty girls, got tired of their rich husbands. We'd have sex. The husbands were fine because it kept them out of their hair while they were having sex with the pool boy. And anyway, so I lived on Tortola doing that for about 8 months, and I make somewhere between $500 and $3,000 for about somewhere between 3 days and a week. Hey, that sounds like a good job, don't you think? Anyway, I was in my bar, which it was right, the only place that these boats would tie up on at the end of the bar was this one at the end of this long dock was this bar. And if you wanted something to eat or a drink, that's the place you went. So I'd be there, and I had my little table, my little tablecloth with the half moons and the stars, my crystal ball, and my Hawaiian shirt and my turban. I always wear a hat, and I would give readings, and I also wash people's feet, and I'm very good at massaging feet, and your feet are the doorway to who you are. To how you can make people go ah, and I would do that, and that's how I get that job. So they come in, they want to parch right. So anyway, one day I'm in there, and this woman comes in, and she's really really beautiful, right? And and as she's walking in, I just see one side of her face, the really, and there's like kind of a little ribbon going across her head, and she's like, I don't know, 100 yards, and she's coming straight to the bar. And my buddy who owns the bar goes, uh-oh. And I go, what do you mean, uh-oh? He said, see that woman? I said, yeah, she's kind of attractive. He goes, she's trouble. Don't say anything to her. Let her get her drink and leave, Don't get involved. Don't say anything. Don't do it. So people tell me not to do something, I'm going to do it. So anyway, she walks in, and she walks up to the bar, and again, she keeps this side of her face. That's all I see is her pretty face. And she goes and she, you know, talks to, gets a drink and comes over and sits down. And this side of her face, she's got a scar from here all the way across. And it comes down here, and from here to here, it's an open gash. Now it's healed over, but from here to here, you see her orbit, and there is no eyeball in there. It's just an empty kind of uh, kind of hole, And from here down to here, her cheek is spread open. So you see the bone up here in her teeth. It's like, right? And before she comes through the door, the last thing my friend says to me, and whatever you do, don't stare at her. So when she sits down and faces that scar right at me, of course, what do I do? You know? Then, what do I say? What the fuck happened to you? Wow. And luckily, she wasn't drunk at the time. She just kind of looks at me and it doesn't even answer that or anything. She goes, "So you do tarot?" I mean, the tarot cards are right there. I said, "Yeah, I do tarot." She goes, "Do my cards." So I kind of do a card. She goes, and so she goes, "What else do you do?" I said, "Well, I got the runes. And, I can have them brew up some tea. I can read your tea leaves. I can, And then I said, and I should have shut up, and I can read your face. And she nearly, got me. Anyway, instead of choking me, she started to laugh, and she goes, "I like you." And I go, "Well, I'm glad." Anyway, we kind of hit it off, and I ended up being her boyfriend for a good few years. And that's stopping the story there because it'll take me another 4 hours just to finish that. But that's Scar. That's how I met Scar. That's who Scar was. That was in Tortola. Jumping back to Duke, and I'm there with all these Nazis, you know. And I will say how she got the scar. She was in a card game, and everyone was drunk, and someone accused her of cheating, and she just knocked this guy's jaw like sideways, and he got up and picked a bailing hook and got her across the face. Now, she came from a pretty rich family in Europe who would have gladly rebuilt her face, but she liked the way it looked because she was a pirate. She liked it. It was like, okay, we're going to stop there. you know? I go back to the Nazis in Duke University. And this is when the first time I stepped into DARPA, you know? And it was like a Disneyland, right? And so for a good 4 months, I hung out there and I built these guys sensory deprivation tanks based on the technology that I got from the guy who wrote the book, The Dieter Factory. Again, go look that one up. And I'm going to be doing this more and more, meaning I'm tired of spoon feeding you guys everything. You guys, it's because we're coming to a time where you got to step up because shit's going to hit the fan. And the only way we can navigate it, ameliorate it, get it so it doesn't kill the whole fucking human race and the planet and, the galaxy, because it has its deeper effect, is the cadre stepping up. That's why I do this, you know? You know? Because, I'm an old guy and it takes a bit of juice out of me every time. And you know, I am past 500 shows. I'm pushing on to almost 600 freaking shows. I look at other people's channel. They've been there since, 2006 and they have 4 videos up. I've been here since, the 8th of May, 2018. And, by the time I stop doing this, in the next month or two, once it gets warm enough for me to hit the deep green, I'm out of here, kids. And now it's nice, this kitchen, me making a nice meal every day. But, my cowboy kitchen out in the deep green, that's a nice kitchen. I got water and, everything I need to cook. I like cooking over a fire. I got my set of cast iron. I got really a great set of cast iron frying pans and Dutch boilers and stuff. Anyway, as soon as it gets warm, I'm going. I'm toast, you know. And so the only way you're going to see me is if you, get your butt to the deep green and you will be very happy if you do that. You will. It will change your life. The physicalness. Yes, hey, you're experiencing me as if I was right there because I am shamanically juicing this screen here and the internet. And that's kind of why a lot of people have told me how they're being knocked off the channel, and I'm losing. People are. It's very strange because the cadre, the number of cadre, is like not going past 267. It gets up to 267 and then drops back, to 259 and then up to 263. And then it's just kind of bing, 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 bing. That's like the glass ceiling here. But I'm pushing almost, I don't know, 30, 40,000 views. Now, 30, 40,000 people are viewing this. And yeah, go look at other people who've been around since 2006, and they have 4 videos up, and they have like 8 views. Anyway. And the other thing about the views is, I don't know, it's 30 something, 40 something thousand, maybe more, but it was up around 50,000, and now it's lost 8,000. I don't know how that works. So there's some mystery within the algorithms and the powers that shouldn't be are playing around with this. I couldn't care less because a number of you are, like Dragon and a few others, have basically copied all these things on memory sticks and on their hard drives, and would be to mix it up. Aren't I mixing it up tonight? I'm bouncing between 5 different stories here. Is that not mixed up enough? Interactive session. Yeah, hey, I'm up. How do I do an interactive session? I kind of do an interactive session. You guys get a hold of me at Dreamy, the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail, and we talk about issues, and I kind of do it, and going on the old actually, every time I ask John to help me technologically, unless I'm ready to give him the keys to the kingdom, he really doesn't want to do anything. I mean, he's nice enough. He gave me a laptop, so because he said you have to look at that other stuff, but that laptop isn't really a laptop. It's what is known as a Chrome. I mean, you got to do everything. There is no way you can, like, there is no place I can write on. I still have to go to the library to doing my writing. You know, um, but hey, I'm fine with this. I am actually totally fine with this because, I got this other, you know, data line going into here from the higher realms. Have any of you guys? I finally figured out if you go to my playlist, right? Hit playlist, and there is a thing, you must see this or watch this or something like that. I figured out how to put things from all the other little piles of things onto that so you can see it. I was saying, oh, you need to look at my history. Well, you can't. Oh, you need to look at this. You can't. But now I figured out how to take all that stuff and put it on that. And there's some really pretty amazing people on that, right? There's this woman, Emily. She is the daughter of Edward, King of England, the guy who got disgraced by loving an American, and that American woman was actually a spy for MI5 who wanted to you know kick him out of the ring so George could be there, and then Elizabeth, the reptile, could be there, and she is great. Meaning she's, I know enough to know that what she's talking about is straight up. And she really has got like a fiber optic thing going into her head. And she is given stuff. Now, people who don't do their homework, who just kind of have a kind of point of view. Oh, the world is flat. Oh, the world is round. Oh, the I'm right, you're wrong. If you have that point of view, well, you'll just think this lady is batshit, but she's not. She's kind of pretty amazing. Then there's this other woman. She's a doctor, and she had worked at CERN and Oxford, and she's got quite a pedigree. And by being in that, she kind of stumbled the way off. And she is this super duper physicist, right? And I've had a couple of girlfriends just like this girl, but it is so incensed her that what's going on, once she gets going, those motherfucking douchebags, it's like, and she's got this French accent because she's, from Brussels or someplace. And it's just, and she knows what she's, because she's in the middle of living it, meaning they're fucking with her big time, and the only way she can deal with it, and they like crash her computer, and she's having to, but she's a smart. No matter what the fuck they do, she, she's like Tweety Bird. They don't know me too well, do they? Until they like, put a bullet in her head, and they call it, suicide. This girl is off the friggin' hook, right? Who else? And there are about 5 or 20 other individuals that I put on that list. And some of you will go, "Ooh, I can't stand that person." Like, I love Jimmy Dore. A lot of people like him. A lot of people hate him. There's a guy named, This Week Tonight, whatever. He's an English guy, and I lived in England. And he's very much like a kind of type of English comic that I like. That when I lived in England, I knew a bunch. I used to be a comedy club right nearby, and those guys, right? And yes, he's on HBO. Of course, he's working for the man, but he's another one of those people that I'm a bibliophile. I mean, I'm all about the information. So he what they do is they don't do like a whole bunch of things. They spend an hour on one subject, one person. And they go at, they dig as deep as, the corporate boys will allow. But there's a lot of information in there that's very good, that gives you threads to pull. I'm all about the pulling the thread. And there's a woman, she's somewhere between the age of 26 and 32, and she is a bibliothèque. She must be a librarian, librarian science. And so what she does, she will stumble across something that she goes, and she just starts taking it apart. And she, in her process, goes, is forensic, just like me. I'm a psychosocial cultural forensic anthropologist. I am a shamanic psychosocial cultural forensic anthropologic alchemist. But when I am in the scholastic world, I don't use those two. But the other morons who are in a box go, "Ooh, you must, yeah." If I would say, shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic, alchemist, they go, "What are you talking about?" So anyway, this girl, she is great because she'll stumble across something, she will go to the mat and dig up everything. Then she collates all that information, writes a really stupendous thing, and then she like read it, memorize, just like in the movies. She memorizes everything, and she goes in front and she says it, and everything that she deals with is like a razor blade. She cuts it up like, and she'll take any subject and just leave you with understanding of what it is. And she really goes, and as research said, oh, maybe what did research say? I think you could, you know, anyway, where was I? Oh, yes, Duke University, building, whatchamacallits, um, you know, whatchamacallits. Where you going, buddy? Tomorrow he's gonna go off on the airplane to Texas, or he's not. right? But he wants me to drive him there. So I have to get up at like 7 in the morning to drive him there, or not. You know? And instead of like preparing himself emotionally, psychically to go up to Texas and be with his boys, he is fixing a leak between the school and the A-frame, and it's pitch black, right? And he's underneath this place. What can I say? You know, he could. I mean, that would be a good excuse for him not to go to Texas and tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Supposed to be beautiful until Wednesday or Thursday. So anyway, where was I before John interrupted? And he can always interrupt. And that's what he does well. So let's see. Nazis, Scar, the Seal Corporation. So you guys need to start doing your homework because, again, I said, oh, we got about 18 months. Well, I would say not. So, how many months is it until the 2020 election? Maybe 16 months. No, not even. Maybe, I don't know, 14 months, right? But what's going to happen is, so the Mueller thing is going to drop, and they're going to like drop the whole thing because it's going to show that uh, uh, Donnie is scumbag, just like every other politician, but he's no worse than any other politician, and so it will widen the schism, right? And because powers that shouldn't be in the hidden hand basically want to ferment another, uh, you know, um, civil war in the United States, right? Just like they did, there was no reason to have a civil war in the 1860s. It wasn't slavery. It was, France and England wanted to take America back, right? And that's what that war was about. And they kind of did because they inserted debt and a central bank. I mean, there's just two or three countries that don't have a central bank: North Korea, Iran, I think that's it, Venezuela, maybe. And and look, who's going to be attacked, you know? So, you know, that's kind of where it is. So, we are going to be invaded by extraterrestrials. And because our whole sky has been covered with you know, what do they call that stuff? It's like baby powder. But it's nano particulate matter, right? And what do red cardinals symbolize when they keep turning up even in state? Oh, well, they are Luciferian, that's for sure. Oh, have you noted? Did you know what happened with our Pope? That because he's a Jesuit, right? And basically, it's totally unraveling about all the pedophilia and Nazis and wars and drugs and you name it, they've been doing it. And our little guy from Argentina, he's go look. I'm not going to say anything. All I'm going to say that shit has already hit the fan, and he basically, the Pope before him retired because he was a Nazi. He was part of the Nazi Hitler Youth. And so shit was going to come out about him, and so he retired because his health wasn't that good. Well, this guy, Francis, he had to retire too, but not. He couldn't retire the way the Nazi boy did, meaning, okay, I'm out of here. You find another one, right? No, they couldn't do that, so they're keeping Francis in there as the poster boy, but other people are now running the show. So go check that out. I mean, every little institution of what's supposed to be great about humanity and our culture is totally coming apart at the seams. And the only way they're going to be able to rebrand this is to have aliens invade and blow up they don't want to have a full, nuclear, winter where they wipe out, 98% of the human race. No, because they still need us, as useless eaters. That's what they call us. But they're shipping a lot of folk off planet to be slaves out there, right? And they have, I mean, go look at good old Jordan Maxwell and, go deep into admiralty law. Basically, you're owned, kids. We're all slaves. Anyway, so the only way this can really be dealt with, and that's why we have this window of opportunity, is through love's co creation, you know? So that's kind of the point of view. So, um, that's what it is. And so you just can't take this as entertainment or a nice little, aperitif or, you know, I believe in the world is round. No, the world is flat. Oh, these guys, that guy, everybody. No, you don't want to be a tribe. You don't want to. Oh, it's all about 5G. No, sorry. I mean, you already got, if you have a friggin' Wi-Fi in your house, you already got 5G going through your brain. If you got a smart meter, the shit's already going through every wire in your house. Oh, you know, only way you can, change this is to be that little pebble in the water. I know. So, I think I've given as many variants in one show that I have in a long time. You know, I think I got 5 there. So, again, go back and watch these shows, because every one has been like time snapped with a shamanic, uh, energetic sitchin. Those little symbols that manifest esoteric power. And if you go and look at them and study them and understand them and exercise and go into state and meditate 4 or 5, 10 times a day, you'll be able to do some pretty amazing stuff. But otherwise, I think it's called being a dilettante, which is fine. Hey, nothing wrong with that. You know. So anyway, as I said, as spring gets closer, see ya. And once I'm out there in the deep green, there's not much I can do, but have a good time. Talk to the animals like Dr. Zeus. Okay, so let's see. It's 1 hour, 4 minutes, and I think at 44 seconds, I will say goodnight. So it's 33, 34, so another 10 seconds. It's all been fun, Mr. Research has been the most commenter, you know. And I'm sure you can figure out what red cardinals are. If you were to Google it, Google is great. It'll give you a thread to go look. That's what I use it for. Nitty gritty. Always good to see you, buddy. Jane, deep green, dreaming. Yep. So, okay, it's getting up there. A few more seconds and we'll be at it. And I love you guys. Stay well, be good. I hope you enjoyed this evening's show. And remember, it's just for laughs and giggles. And this is Cowboy Bob, Sensei Al Bob's cousin, saying adios. See you later. Tomorrow.